Good morning. So nice to see you all. Welcome to the grill. Woo! This is our first time doing it at the Directors Guild of America, and this theater is so beautiful that we love trying new spaces. But it is the 15th year that we have gathered to talk about the impact of technology on the entertainment business. So it's been a long time. Round of applause. 15 years. Thank you very much. I don't look a day older. Thank you for saying so. But we're really in the midst of very significant change in the industry, and there's any number of ways to mark what those changes are. They are, for many people in this industry, personal, they are life-changing, and there's going to be winners and losers, but they may not be who you expect them to be. Let's just start with AI, which, as you can see, last year we talked about quite a bit. The arrival of artificial intelligence, about a year and a half ago now, has moved past the panic phase to where we are now, which is, I think, what does it mean for me? So we're going to talk today with experts from Hollywood, from their major studios, who are talking about how they are actively using artificial intelligence in their content production. We're going to talk to AI companies themselves, who are going to talk about the ethics involved that raise concerns for IP and copyright holders. And we'll also hear from creatives and how they are actually using artificial intelligence now to drive efficiency in their work or to allow them to stretch their capacities in ways that they never before thought were possible. So some jobs are going to be made easier, but some jobs will be lost. When we have a once-in-a-generation technology like this, it leapfrogs so many other changes that we've been trying to adapt to. But there are lots of other changes going on in the macroeconomics of the business, as we are seeing in the performance of the major entertainment companies. The stock prices of Hollywood's major historic studios are down 40, 30, 20% in the past few years. As we know, Disney, Warner, Paramount, two of those companies are celebrating their centennials this year. Paramount stock is down 70% in the last 5 years. Meanwhile, Netflix, the streaming giant founded in 1997, just to remind you, as a mail-order DVD rental service, now stands at $719 a share as of this writing. And so we're seeing the ripple effects of these changes, thousands of job losses this year at Paramount, Disney, Netflix, Warner, Lionsgate, in a full employment economy. We've written about independent producers who are changing careers. We've talked about below-the-line veterans who are on unemployment, production professionals who have side hustle jobs, like one Emmy-winning hairdresser we wrote about who cuts hair in her backyard. We've known for some time independent film has been in kind of an economic crisis, and just yesterday we wrote about the steep decline in reality TV production. So if ever the Grill's conversation about the changes technology is bringing to creators of content, if it ever mattered, it's now. I just want to remind you, when we started this conference 15 years ago, and I just want to also give a shout out because at that first conference, Jeff Sagansky, who's our speaker, was featured, and before that, Peter Guber, who's also here this morning, did the very first event with TheWrap, also 15 and a half years ago, at his house. At the time, Netflix had only just started streaming. That's how quick these changes are. Twitter was brand new. Some couple of guys had sold YouTube to Google for $1.65 billion. Seemed pretty crazy. Box office was healthy. Cable TV was driving billions of dollars. And here we are now, past the peak of the streaming revolution, and our consumer habits have changed. So in response to all of this, the industry is in the midst of a serious realignment, and that is what we want to talk about this morning with two very eminent speakers. Peter Guber, who has led Sony Pictures Entertainment, runs still Mandalay Pictures, also has ownership of the LA Dodgers and the Golden State Warriors. He's with us, along with Jeff Sagansky, who not only led CBS, NBC, and Sony back at the time when networks were king, but is now a central figure still in the drive for public investment via SPACs in companies such as DraftKings and Lionsgate Studios. Before we get going, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors who we could not do without. Thank you to Easter Seals, Southern California, City National Bank, Wrap Book Payroll, Veritone, SAG-AFTRA, NBC Universal Telemundo, Sony Pictures, New York Festivals, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Roku Media, the LA Film School, Disney, and Fox. Thank you, guys. And also, I would like to take a moment to thank our incredible hardworking team, the TheWrap event staff, Chad Hudson Productions, amazing AV team. Thank you guys for helping us put on a great show. Let's have a great show. Onward to the grill. Please welcome Jeff Sagansky and Peter Guber. We're going to start with a few words from Jeff. Gentlemen, come on out.
First of all, I want to tell you how delighted I am to be here to help Sharon celebrate 15 years in business. In those 15 years, MGM was sold, Universal was sold, Fox was sold, Warner's was sold twice, Paramount's desperately trying to be sold. So that leaves just Disney, Sony, and Sharon still standing. TheWrap has no animated characters, no video game consoles, just strong, compelling reporting and analysis. So bravo to you, Sharon. Also, I'm delighted to be here with Peter. So 47 years ago, I was getting out of school. I desperately wanted to be in the entertainment business. I didn't know anyone in Hollywood, but I read about this wonderkin who had grown up in Newton, Massachusetts, one town over from where I had grown up. And at age 35, he had already been head of Columbia Pictures production. So I wrote to him. In those days, you wrote people, and he wrote back. He said, if you're out here, come see me. And in May of 1977, I drove up to the Warner's lot, and there was Peter ensconced in the Casablanca Records and Filmworks bungalow, and he was busy planning for the release of The Deep. That's the one with Jackie Bissett, which in my opinion was the first modern motion picture marketing campaign. At any rate, Peter took me through the trailer, the TV spots, the entire marketing campaign, the bus poster. He was very focused on the bus poster, and the subway art, maybe in more detail than I really wanted to know, but I was just happy to be in the room. So Peter couldn't have been more encouraging and patient, and he talked so fast, though. And after the meeting, I called my father in Boston. I said, I really want to move out to LA. I said, but when I start talking too enthusiastically about bus posters, you have to let me know. So in any case, that's Peter's secret weapon. As we all know, it's his energy and his focus, and it's evident in everything that he has ever done. I want to kick off this morning with some thoughts about how the forces of change are continuing to upend our business. And I want to start by referencing that much smaller business that I was so eager to get into, and I was in school in the early 70s. The TV business then, it consisted of 3 networks. They exercised oligopolistic powers. They set ad rates in lockstep each year. They told you how the very specific terms under which they would do business. They made oodles of money, and most importantly, they demanded and received 90% of all the back end or ancillary economics of anything that they deigned to put on the air. And those 3 networks were also the primary source of the country's news. And there are White House tapes that have come to light from 1970 and 1971, where you've got President Nixon, Chuck Colson, who was his chief of staff, and Attorney General John Mitchell. They're all there in the Oval Office talking about how much they detested the network's coverage of the Vietnam War, and which they insisted was going swimmingly. And when the networks presented an alternative view, which they did, it drove Nixon and the Republican Congress crazy with accusations of liberal bias. Does this sound a little familiar? The administration was dead set on punishing the 3 networks for their news coverage at the same time that all the Hollywood producers and studios were asking that the network predatory powers be curbed. And in 1971, everyone was delighted, including Nixon, with the FCC's financial interest rules, which prohibited the 3 networks from producing and owning their own their own show. It gave rise to wonderful things, most notably the explosion of independent television producers. At this point, MTM, Norman Lear, Aaron Spelling, it changed everything. And this change was just getting started as I was arriving in Hollywood, and together with the expansion of cable, which at the same time went from 16 million homes to 50 million homes, only 10 years later, the modern television business was born. And it was, for the 50 years that Peter and I have been in the business, it was a perpetual growth machine until now. So why do I reference what happened 50 years ago? The reason is because today we are in the last stages of the formation of a new oligopoly, which is going to dominate TV and film consumption for at least the next decade. The average American home subscribes to 4 streaming services. We all know that there are many more than 4, but they are rapidly consolidating to only 4. Netflix, Disney/Hulu, Amazon, and Max, or whatever Max merges into or gets merged into shortly. Together, these 4 streaming services are on the brink, I believe, of great profitability. Even if this transition has been hard, they all complain, but I think they're on the verge of great profitability, and they will act and are already acting as true oligopolists. An oligopoly is a small number of firms that control a majority of the market share, and they use their power to extract outsized profits. What's the number one go-to strategy for the oligopolist? Raise prices, and you raise prices continually, like Hulu, going from $12 in the end of 2019 to $18 today, like Netflix Premium, going from $14 in the same period to $23 today. Disney going from $7 to $16 today. Several years from now, I have no doubt we're going to be looking at 4 services, each charging $25 per month, and that 4-streamer bundle will cost as much on a cost-adjusted basis as people are paying for their cable bill now. And these streamers are going to make even more margin on their advertising plus subscription model because of the rich data allowing them to charge anywhere from $50 to $60 CPM. What else is in the oligopolist playbook? Well, using their market power to cut back on costs. If there are a limited number of competitors, they all signal to one another that they don't have to compete as hard, so that the profit margins will go up for everyone. And after the latest strike, that's exactly what the streamers all signaled to each other. We're cutting back on production, and every trade, every guild, every producer is feeling the effects of this dramatic cutback. And finally, the last practice of the oligopolist is sort of a throwback to the pre-FinCEN days. That is the need for the streamers to own everything and for as long as possible. Thanks to the recent guild negotiations, there are some performance bonuses built into the contract for a lucky few, but these pale in comparison to what successful shows used to be worth in the non-streaming universe. And given the high rate of cancellation, the short 8 to 10 episode orders, and the relatively small percentage of viewing that occurs a year after the show is out of production, it would be much more equitable for each of these streamers to take a 5-year license from the last season of a series and then allow the copyright and the distribution rights of the show to revert to the producer and the creative elements. So if all of this anti-competitive behavior that I've outlined is the true nature of the oligopolists, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what the true nature of the Justice Department and the FTC is in dealing with oligopolies. In America, oligopolies dominate business. Everything from airlines to telcos to credit cards to recorded music, they're all oligopolies. However, the government is most likely to act if there is harm to the consumer in the form of product pricing, or if the suppliers to the oligopolies are hurt by predatory purchasing power. And I don't think anybody here will be surprised when the Justice Department takes a hard look into the streaming issue in either a Democratic or Republican administration. In a Democratic administration because of union and guild issues, and in a Republican administration because of their distrust of high tech and media. So where is Richard Nixon when you need him most? The final point I want to make is, as we tend to think of entertainment habits as being very long cycles. You know, for 30 years, movie theater attendance dominated entertainment until the networks came along in the early to mid-50s. And then broadcast dominated entertainment, the entertainment world, until cable viewership surpassed it in 2003. But Netflix and the streamers only took 15 years to surpass cable. Today, they've got 40% market share of the entertainment business, and they're still growing. So people are always saying, well, okay, is this game over now? Is streaming the ultimate winner in this? And, you know, for now, sure, that's true, but I would argue that it ignores the rapid changes that we are continuing to see in our business. And I'm going to give you one tsunami that is now forming, which we could talk about, and that is what we're seeing with Gen Z viewing. You know, Gen Z are those consumers between the age of 12 and 27. They are not watching television at all. They're historically low levels of television. Only 17% of their entertainment time is spent watching TV. Instead, they're playing games, they're listening to podcasts, music, they're interacting with social media and videos, etc. This is an incredible development because when you go to consumers 35 years old, only 8 years older, 43% of their time is spent watching TV, and the older you get, the more TV dominates. So this is a tsunami forming because when Gen Z stop buying for streaming subscriptions, you're going to start to see the business stop growing, and it's going to begin to shrink, and investors will immediately crush the entire stocks of the streaming sector. And the final thing I want to say, there's one more factor that could have a more immediate impact on streaming, and that is the dominant platform, and that is as the consumer grapples with the increasing cost of streaming, they're turning to free ad-supported television, you know, these fast channels, and they are growing at an incredible pace. 57% of all television viewers are watching them, and when they watch, they're watching for 90 minutes, which is a huge amount of time. Only 3 fast providers, Tubi, Pluto, and Roku, are getting 4.3% of the total TV viewing. When you add in the other 12 providers, it could be as high as 7%. The run rate revenue of these fast channels in only a couple of years is $9 billion. That's still only 20% of what the streaming revenues are, but they are only now starting to think about commissioning original programming. And given their budgets, they may well embrace a more traditional and equitable split of rights. So this gives me hope that as we wait for the Justice Department intervention or whatever, or otherwise a more equitable path forward for the streamers, you know, these fast channel providers could be a lifeline for the producers and guild. And with that, I'm going to join Sharon and Peter.
All right, so now you know I always feel like when I talk to Jeff, I'm like in school, should be taking notes. I hope you're all taking notes because you don't get that kind of concentrated wisdom very often. Thanks for that. And we have a panel at the end of the day about fast channels as well. So that's a great kind of foreshadowing. Peter, let me just start with asking you, sir, what are your thoughts about the future vision that the Oracle of Sagansky has provided?
There'll always be a future, just like there was always
great.
a past. No, there'll always be
endorse.
a future. If you keep your head looking at the future and learn from the past, there'll always be opportunity. I always believe there's a way through. And I always believe that however it changes, there will be artists and audiences. There will be people like yourselves who take advantage of that connection by making entertainment, by making value propositions to that audience that will be economically robust for you, for all of us. So if I didn't have that attitude, where I am at my age and what I was doing, I wouldn't be doing it. And the idea is I believe in the future. I think all of these headwinds are real headwinds and are real challenges. But in every problem, there's an opportunity. And that's the thing. Look for the opportunity. Look for the way to wring out not just more profit from just your pictures and television, but what other businesses are you going to be in that service the entertainment community. For myself, I saw some of these things happening years ago. I went through the whole music business. I went through the television business. I went through the movie business. And I found another business where artists and audiences connect. Artists connecting with audiences will always be there. I saw it in the sports business, in the sports entertainment business, in the program sports business, in the live sports business. And I made an addition, didn't leave filmed entertainment. I filmed, or if you will, digital filmed entertainment. But I decided, I think that was my calling, to find a way to connect artists and audiences so that people felt compelled by watching whatever programming was on. So I have a lot of expectations that that's the way we are wired. And ultimately, business will have to turn to it. Yes, they will be monopolistic, and I agree with that. And we've seen that habituation to the monopoly by all the companies. But I think that you can't lose sight of your optimism. If you do, as creative people in the community, if you do, as people that want to entertain, that want to inform, that want to delight your audience, then you have to have a different point of view. You have to come with a different point of view. Otherwise, you'll be run down by the facts. There are real facts out there that Jeff points out. But how do you do it? How do you look at yourself? I can only tell you how I look at myself. I look at myself as connecting artists and audiences, broadly defined. Artists and audiences. Artists are sports personalities, players, teams. They're live Broadway. Live Broadway isn't going away. Live theater isn't going away. People, with all the digital world, every bit of digital world, there's still a gigantic live entertainment world. Look at music live entertainment. It's robust. It's fantastic. How does film fit in with it? So the idea is you have to find your way through. You have to be active in your own rescue. Don't wait just for the government to give you a clear path. Create your clear path. If you aren't active in your own rescue, you will be on the dustbin of history. Film, television, music, whatever it is. So the idea is I have a very optimistic view. My optimistic view is I'm going to depend upon me challenging the incumbency, challenging the headwinds, and moving into that with interesting entertainment opportunities. I think they're there. I think they're there in a multitude of ways. I know that one of the things you were doing with the theater thing is really a fantastic idea.
We'll say what it is, because people don't know.
We're buying the Dolby Theater.
Right. Yeah. Jeff does all the stuff that's very below the radar. I found that out like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, sorry, buying the Dolby Theater.
Tell them why you're buying the Dolby Theater.
Because it's owned by CalPERS, and CalPERS basically does nothing, and it's the only theater I've ever been in where there's no concessions. Have you ever been in a theater where there was no concessions? So, they just didn't book it. They used it for the Academy Awards, a couple of other events, right. But it's a huge, beautiful theater built in, it's only 20 years old and it's not used at all. But keep going. I love listening to this.
But he didn't buy it from Dolby. That also surprised me. Like it's not owned by Dolby. It's owned by CalPERS, which I thought was kind of crazy.
Live entertainment is huge. I look at my life in that codec, connecting artists and audiences broadly defined.
But Peter, I want to ask you a question. So, I remember so vividly, because it was the first event that we did as a company. So we launched in 2009. I had known Peter as a reporter, and like reporter to source kind of thing, and we'd gotten a little friendly.
No.
Okay, not friendly. Okay, whatever.
It's an adversarial relationship.
But Peter is known as somebody who really likes to extend himself, mentor people. I mean, it's really true, Peter. You have a huge, an army of people who you've trained, you've mentored.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, it's really true. But I wasn't mentored, but he was always happy to be supportive. So I called him up. I said, I was interested in YouTube and how YouTube was changing communication. We had an event in Peter's living room with the founder of YouTube and a PhD professor who was studying how YouTube was completely transforming the velocity and the manner in which people communicated, which may seem quaint today, but I guarantee you in 2009 it was a really revolutionary idea. So at that time you were definitely thinking about the changes that were happening, but where you actually pivoted to was sports. And I'm curious if you could talk about what you saw, like when you're weighing, okay, the movie business has maybe hit its peak. I'm not giving up on movies, and movies like Batman, The Deep, as we said, but you love movies, but that's not where the growth is. How did you make that decision?
Well, as I said before, I looked at myself as a connector. I'm not the artist, and I'm not the audience. I'm the connector between artist and audience, broadly defined. So I saw where were the audiences going. And I watched live sports, program sports, especially live sports, and recognized there was a different kind of audience. When you go to a movie, you go see Rocky, and you sit in the theater, guy wins. You go to the next week to the same theater, guy wins again. You watch it on the plane going across the country, same guy wins. You watch it on television, he wins again. You know he wins. The uncertainty of sports is a vast valley which you can populate. The uncertainty the audience likes. They don't know who wins. They don't know how they win, and they win different ways. So the idea is the audience is actually a participant in the outcome. You have to believe the audience impacts the outcome. I do believe that. I really believe it. I believe it tangentially. I believe it problematically. I believe it openly. I believe it. I'm a cohort for that. I watch it with all of my sports teams. The audience believes they make a difference. Rooting for them in their home alone, they think they make a difference. They really believe in that. That kind of fervor, to tap into that kind of fervor, and to recognize it transfers over to documentaries, even though it's just a documentary of it, but you are connected. You have ownership in that team or those players. You're familiar with them. You like them in a unique way. They're real. And so what happens is you bond with them. And when you bond with them, you have a brand, you bond with them. You can use that to really fill theaters, take eyeballs, make money, and I've done a pretty good job of it so far. In the last
Can you
few years.
share, like, what has been the biggest challenge as you've put a lot of your time and focus into sports teams like the Dodgers, like the Golden State Warriors, and I guess you're launching a WNBA team as well in January. I might have that wrong. I might have it right.
Yeah.
Right? You sent me a note about it, Valkyries. So what have been? How is it different? How is it challenging? How is it rewarding?
You have to see yourself as a connector in those two forces, artists and audiences. You have to see that. You have to recognize that audience wants to be engaged, high level of engagement. Uncertainty is a value proposition. You have to be able to cultivate continued, repetitive viewership. You have to offer them reasons why they continue to view, because they have to own the team. They have to have partnership with the players. You have to get out of their way to help formulate that relationship capital, because that relationship capital really creates the bond, not a brand, but a bond between you and that team, you and those players, and the history of it passing along to your children and family, a joint communication with all of them. It becomes part of the language. The franco lingua of today is sports. Sports and politics. Well, politics.
It is, but what did you bring? I could say anybody rich can buy a sports team, which isn't really true, okay? But it's like you're bringing something in addition to that. Like, what is that? How do you express that connection that is so important?
I look at the sports teams and venues and enterprises that I've built as cathedrals for the audience to use it to express themselves, to feel part of the process, not alienated from the process. Most people feel alienated watching news. Most people feel, if they watch half of television as news, they feel alienated. It's threatening to them. They can't feel even good. They watch the news, they have to go take a shower after watching the news. And it's everywhere. Everything is news. 24/7, everywhere you go. You can't escape it. It's toxic reality. Sports allows you to break away from that. So we try to be thoughtful of that. We try to create enterprise value in their relationship with the team and the players. And as ownership, get out of the way of it and let that develop. Have them be participants in that development. Let them take ownership of that. You don't own a movie. You don't own a movie. You own a team. And so the idea is, yes, you are in the location-based entertainment business. And yes, you have to have the right kind of venue. And yes, you have the right kind of food and beverage. And yes, you have to program it as an experiential way in every single way. But the idea is there's a great opportunity there. And you're seeing it now in the world with other sports taking hold. I mean, I was approached, you won't believe this, 20 times by these people in pickleball. I play pickleball.
Oh, no.
Pickleball. And I had to make a decision. Is pickleball a sport that will do well in broadcast? Will it do well in media? Will it do well? You make decisions. You decide what to pass on.
Where do you
It's like
stand on
moving.
pickleball?
What?
Where do you stand on pickleball?
I'm in a pickle about it. It seems to be expanding still and getting a lot of attention, but I don't think it's getting intention. I think it's getting attention. And I don't think it's, it's not a photographic sport. You watch it. It's really hard to watch. It's like watching ping pong.
Yeah.
It's just very...
I love ping pong.
Yeah, but
competitive
you're
ping
not
pong
gonna
is
watch
like
it on a team.
Olympic ping pong. Like, that's unbelievable. Okay, I want to move on because our time is limited. And I want to have time to talk about AI. Jeff, when we've talked in the run-up to this conversation today, you have talked a lot about the loss of value, about the decisions by the leaders of Hollywood's major studios and how that has led to a kind of stunning loss of value over the past few years. Do you think that was avoidable? And do you think it was this pivot to streaming that you were talking about that is at the heart of that?
So there are a lot of, in terms of loss of value, we're talking about, basically over $190 billion in terms of these stock prices when you put them all together. But what's interesting to me is that when a product starts to lose its value for the consumer, and what has been the driver for 50 years in the entertainment business has been TV. TV is still today, after losing almost half the audience, it's still $150 billion value business in terms of revenues. And just to put that in perspective, you've got an entire, if you take the NBA, MLB, and you take football, that's a $40 billion business. You take television and film in this country, still today, it's $150 billion.
You're not counting
business.
YouTube in that, I presume.
I'm not counting YouTube.
You're not counting YouTube.
I'm
yeah.
just counting broadcast.
Because
and
YouTube
cable.
might be as big as all of that.
And yet here are this is an incredible thing. So we start to feel, people are paying too much from cable. You can see it in the NPS scores. People hate their cable company. They feel they're being ripped off. And so streaming starts, and people have a choice to make, and they make it. But what does cable do? You would think that something that when they're sounding the alarm, what do? Well, what all these operators did, they basically raised the prices. They did not take the prices down. They raised the prices. They produced less programming at a time when the building was on fire. So that is an incredible thing. So they hastened basically the cash cow, and they all turned and they said, okay, it's over. We're just going to milk it for profits. And they made a fundamental mistake. And, you wonder, why didn't the studios, why aren't they Netflix? And in fact, there's always these reasons why a business grows. Netflix started at the exact same moment when the DVD started to go down. And all these studios said, oh my God, there's a huge hole in my P&L, so what am I going to do? I'm going to sell all this stuff to Netflix. They were the ones, thanks to net neutrality and very low costs of borrowing money, as well as the studios, they combined to enable Netflix at a certain time. And they could have been Netflix. They tried to be Netflix. And by the way, they started Hulu, and it worked out very well for them. But they could have been Netflix, and they missed the opportunity to do it. So
they also could have bought Netflix at a certain time.
And they could have bought Netflix,
right.
Of course. Yeah.
Why do you think that's a mystery? What did they do way back? They were always going to sell all their libraries. When the video cassette came along, all the companies, in order to stay alive, would sell their library off for pennies. Get rid of their library instead of realizing it was an opportunity. They saw it as a problem. They've always done this.
Yeah.
They have two eyes in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. So, yeah.
What do you really think, Peter?
So, I think a lot of what we're seeing in the business today, and it's so brutal to watch, You know, you're seeing the traditional business collapse. You know, there used to be 105 million cable homes. Today there's 50. And at the same time, you're seeing all this predatory, behavior from the streamers. And the two of them together are causing unbelievable cataclysm in the business that we both love.
And you know something? There will be blood, like that movie, but there will be opportunity. And for you to be clever enough to find the opportunity is what you have to do. You have to try to find it. Don't give up on the entertainment business. The entertainment business will always be there. It's been there for thousands of years. It isn't going to go away in 2025. It's just not going to go away.
And we have the yin and the yang on the stage here today, I feel like.
Well, you know what? But I do think Peter's right. In that's why this whole AI theme that you're doing
That's
today
what I want to get. Yes,
is so interesting because I think you're going to see an incredible democratization of filmmaking because of AI. And people are going to have the tools. They're going to. I mean, I see what they. I love ancient history, and for years I would take whatever I could find of ancient Rome, and you could walk through it. And the rendering of those sets now are so precise. They're so incredible, and everybody's going to have that to put actors in, and never have to build the Colosseum or anything. So I think the democratization of filmmaking is right on the cusp of happening now.
I just want to push back on that a little bit because I remember all too well the turn of this century when we talked about the iPhone and anybody could make a movie, and I used to go and I still go to Sundance every year, and there was this exuberance, maybe irrational exuberance, about the ability of anybody to make a movie because it costs no money, and people were doing it on their credit cards, and they had credit cards, and they had the tools of production. And if anything, independent film is is just flat on its back.
Wait a second. It takes talent, not digital zeros and ones. It takes talent.
Right.
You give people the tools, they don't know how to use them, or they don't have talent, you're going to have crap.
Well, I think the premise was there's all this talent out there that the Hollywood system is blocking, and if only they had the tools, we'd see this huge surge of amazing. Well, we haven't.
Talent's the scarcest resource.
For
Simple
sure.
as that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm just wondering: is AI really going to?
Why did you make flops? Oh, I get it. What a strategy! Just make the hits. Oh, I get it. They just make the hits, don't make the flops. You're going to always have failure and success. It's a very difficult business to be predictive of what's successful in the early phase.
Well, Peter,
talent does it.
All right, so
but
what do you think
everybody
about?
isn't talented.
What do you think about AI?
I think it's going to be a transformative technology that's going to be both a tool and a weapon. It's going to change the whole logistic platform much more quickly than anything else. And the question will be, if it can be shaped correctly, it'll be a wonderful tool. If it turns out to be a weapon, it's going to be a dangerous weapon. Do I know the answer to that? No, I don't.
And the question for me is, okay, if you've got these tools and you can make something that you could not have made before, and you can go to places and with set renderings of things that would have cost way more money to make, is there also the AI that can help you self-distribute? I mean, in other words, you can make something good, but then do you have to go through somebody, one of the established distributors, or is there going to be, through AI and that technology, a way to get directly to the consumer? And if that happens, then all bets are off.
Well, you have a way to get to the consumer now. I mean, you have places you can distribute on your own. You can put it on TikTok. You can put it on X.
It's the
you can
discovery.
Put it on YouTube,
the discovery,
but the discovery is the issue.
Is really the issue. And by the way, discovery is the issue for all the small platforms, for Peacock, for Apple. All these streamers are all looking for a way to make an impact. If Apple can't make an impact and they can't get their stuff watched, how does a filmmaker, a small filmmaker who's made a great film, how do they get their stuff known?
Right.
And the question is are there going to be algorithms that AI will discover as a way to get directly that filmmaker to the consumers?
Perspiration and inspiration, drive, energy, belief and conviction in the future, you got to have it if you're in this business. If you don't, go into the bottled water business. People always need water, but that's part of the business, is flying into the headwinds taking advantage of the opportunity, working the edges in. Yes, we're not some gigantic company as individual artists and companies, but we'll find the way through. I really believe that. I have to be optimistic because I was just telling you, I had a dinner with Norman Lear, his 100th, day before his 100th birthday. He was talking about, what shows he wanted to make, what he wanted to do. He had an actual vision and belief in that future. And so I think that's really important to leave this conversation with recognizing you can look at the problem, but look at the opportunity. That's where your future resides.
That's a great note to leave it on. I could talk to you guys all day, but unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. But that's a great note to leave it on. Peter, Jeff, thank you so much. Join me in thanking them for this amazing conversation.